Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Barnes.
And I'm Mark Langley.
Hi Mark, our questions for you this week are about a horse that will not take a single step backwards, introducing rugs to horses that haven't had a lot of handling, and horses that respond differently to a trainer and their owner. So, they sort of just don't really listen to their owner, and they can do what they want to do, but the trainer, they can act as a slightly sort of better student, as it were. So we're keen to hear your thoughts on some training tips on all of these scenarios. We'll start off with Sarah's question, who is from Stanthorpe in Queensland in Australia. And this is a question that is about a rescue thoroughbred who she's helped find a new home, and she's offered her help for this horse to safely lead. He's going to be a paddock horse, but she understands that it's really important to teach the horse the basics and to understand, leading and the rope and what that is all about. And she's found that they've established a lovely soft feel going forwards and stepping sideways. He's going around her without crabbing, which is really good. But she cannot get him to take a single step backwards. So they've tried everything. She's been doing your methods. When it's all failed, she's gone crazy with a flag to see if she can get any reaction, but there's nothing. There's no indication of him wanting to move backwards. All he does is brace and lift his head as high as possible. So I know you're going to comment on that in a second. When it came to floating, though, to go to his new home, he loaded in the trailer just fine, but it took them an hour to get him off. He just would not go backwards. They had to, just without treats, without pressure, without any encouragement, he just stayed in there. So in the end, they took the divider out. And of course, he had to sort of figure out turning around and scrambling out, which was, he managed it, but it was a difficult scenario. So how does she encourage him to take a tiny step backwards? And can you explain why? What is going on for him not to want to take a step back? Isn't it a normal movement?
I think that's not necessarily the easiest movement for a horse. It's a funny, some people say, oh, well, they don't back up in the wild. But it is a thing that they can do. And some horses are very good at learning back up. Some find it as easy peasy. Some horses, have learnt to back up towards another horse before they kick and stuff like that. And other horses just really struggle, and they just kind of pivot off the hind feet, jump across and run off in a different direction, but they preload the hindquarter. And every time there's pressure on, they preload the hindquarter, brace it, ready to spring forward. So, and some race horses are stuck like that, standard breds that are sort of, but a standie, I think sometimes, I'm not sure if they actually back them into the gig or sometimes they put the gig on them, but there's a lot of horses with preloaded hindquarter that have a forward response, but not a backward response. Backing is a gate because most horses, when they find they're comfortable back up, they're all in a 2-beat rhythm, a 2-beat diagonal rhythm. So it's like a walking version of a trot. So if all of them seem to find a 2-beat rhythm, then if backup was something completely foreign, then they'd all be doing it very differently, and it'd be very, very awkward for every horse to do it. So, but there are some that just really resist. And take away the idea that there's nerve pain. Okay, so if you need to check that sort of stuff, you delve into that sort of stuff because there could be a block in there or something, or any sort of physical problem you might want to look into. I have to sort of say that first because I'd hate someone to force a horse through something if they were really, really struggling with a physical problem. My ideas on this, I know you've tried just about everything. If they were that stuck by the seams of it, they're bracing up and preloading the hind and just pushing and locking up their front end. So the sideways movement that you're doing is good. Now, I was nearly thinking that if he was really stuck, you'd find it quite hard to get him to do an indirect rein hindquarter yield. And I was going to sort of give you a solution with a flag or just a stick or something. It's something I don't teach people to do at clinics and just move their horses around with sticks. But some horses that are really stuck in trying to get them to rebalance in the rein, sometimes just getting their hindquarter to flow to start with is not such a bad thing because it frees up the hind feet. So the idea, I think, is when if he can already lead around you, and you've seen this one before, but for everybody, as the horse is leading around you, we pick up a feel on the rope that creates an indirect rein feel for the hindquarter, and the horse starts to move its hindquarter over in a forward motion. So what I'd encourage is strengthening the hindquarter yield. And as he's doing a hindquarter yield, also try and get situations where you're pushing the shoulders out a little bit so he's moving sideways like you. So if you said he's moving sideways, you must have the wither already moving out a bit, yeah? So, or the shoulders moving out. And do the indirect rein while he's walking, get strong hindquarter movements where he's moving the hindquarter, moving the hindquarter, moving the hindquarter, and do it on both sides, both sides. If that was a really stuck horse that you're really fighting, you couldn't get him to lead because he's really frozen, what I was going to say is just have him near a fence, just have a flag, and just kind of just tap, tap, tap on his rump till he just kind of starts to move his hip over a bit until he can move his hip all the way over. The reason I say have him near a fence is because I want the fence to block his forward, not him just rush forward with that hindquarter pressure. But for everybody else, I don't just go to moving a horse over with a flag in the hindquarter unless everything was locked up and it was too much struggle for that person to kind of get them to lead, and it was a block that like they couldn't get with the lead rope. So another thing is you just have him on the fence. You just move him around so his hip's just moving till he gets near the fence and move him the other way. And his head's on the fence, so he's not pushing forward. And once that hindquarter frees up, and of course the fence is stopping that forward movement, then he's doing it more at a standstill. But then eventually you're going to sort of put it backward on him. But with the leading one that I was just explaining before, as you're leading, you get really good hindquarter movements and good sideways. Off the back of that, you quickly get both hands and give him a shove back. So as his feet are moving, especially the hind feet, then you quickly just give him a shove, and he might just take a little backward step, just like not much, and then you just leave it, and then you do the hindquarter yield the other way, and you just give him a little backward shove while he's in movement. And you might find before he gets a chance to brace, you might just get him to step back a little and just show him that he can back off that nose pressure a little bit. And just keep trying it off the back of a sideways movement, and you'll find that you'll get a chance to get a little bit of a backward on him. There's a bit of creativity if you had any alleyways or something like that. I had an idea that you could actually sort of have something like a piece of cardboard, and you have him in an alley and just test him to see if something coming towards him and there's no way forward and not a lot of way sideways if he was able to step back. But then I just remembered he didn't come out of the horse float. He was completely stuck in there. So maybe it's just not worth trying that. It's better off just saying, let's just float sideways. Let's just get a backward movement and just try that for a little while. And then once you can get that backward movement, having just a little one off the sideways, then you add a bit more every time until he starts to find his back up. And the real stuck horses in the past, I've had some pretty good success with that.
Okay, so from a horse that won't take a step backwards to a horse that runs back to the barn. This question's from Carla from Germany. She's been working a horse that's quite unreliable for his owner. So when he's outside of the property, he can be quite a stoic type. But when his older rider is on him, in her words, he takes advantage of her. She's worked him in the ring, on the ground, as well as off the property on the ground. She can get him leading really good. But he understands the difference between her and his owner. So what's happening is that when his owner's riding him, he will run back with her to the barn. He's not afraid or frightened. He just runs back because he can. Is there any way that she can sort of teach him or train him to make him a little bit safer for his owner?
Yeah, well, I think he obviously got strong thoughts. So I get the feeling he might have quite a bit of compliance with you, Carla, in the sense that he's listening to you and he's doing things reasonably well, but he might still be sort of hiding away like a sleeper inside. He's not quite there, and he might have something I just want you to look at when you work him really close. Look at is how he's processing everything. Is he fairly kind of just compliant but not very sort of, hey, look at this, look at that, what's there? I'd say he's kind of got this sneaky, secret, backward thought, kind of always sort of slightly anchoring somewhere, but he's being compliant with you because he knows that your boundaries and you're a lot clearer. So he's not testing it with you, but then with the owner, he goes, loophole, let's get out of here. But I have a feeling he's not present enough most of the time, because if he was present, he wouldn't have to go to the barn. So it's not about a horse doesn't just run to the barn. They got to want to run to the barn. And the reason they want to run to the barn is because they want to be at the barn, which means they're not present. Because a horse is present is in that moment with you. They're not thinking at the barn because they're with you. So I would say he's got this kind of slight anchored thought possibly all the time. It's just that it shows up as there's an anchored thought, but it becomes a movement when he's with his owner. So something I would really look at is he he's the sort of horse I feel I would try and want to wake up a bit more and sort of put him in a bit of what was that response, and then see what he does and try and sort of trigger a little bit more like awareness in him. So he starts to go, I've got to really think about this environment I'm in. So sometimes when you work with those horses, you do something kind of a bit random. You might have your flag and bang a drum or something, or do something, and they go, oh, geez, what was that? And you go, I don't know, but can you follow this lead rope? And then all of a sudden they start to go, I better think about this environment that I'm in, because, or that trigger might send them back to the barn. And if that trigger sends them back to the barn, well, the whole time he was still anchored on the barn. He was just kind of being obedient. So I would do a few little experiments with him first, just to sort of test where he is emotionally and if he is really centered or he's just got a secret anchor with you too. And if you test that and you find that he does open up and he's sort of a little bit more aware, and he goes back to the barn, well, you can say that's not available. And then you say, come back and be aware here until he's not thinking about the barn anymore and he starts to let go of that. But then if you're working him to the owner, it's imperative that you show the owner that. And so she understands it, because if she doesn't understand it, well, she won't read those signs and he'll just go back into shutting out, being a bit anchored. And then when he gets far enough away, then he takes off back for the barn. So I think getting him very present and in a better mindset's the key. And sometimes through those random little triggers that happen, that you can make happen sort of outside a little bit, it gets them to be aware and start to sniff and look at things and process their environment. And then because they're doing that, they're not anchored at the barn. The other thing is, when you do those things, it gives you a chance to set a boundary again, so he knows he can't pull. And then, you have to show the owner these things. And he has to be super soft and present for the owner to ride him. Otherwise, he'll always do it. You can't make her any stronger. You can make her clearer, but if she's a bit older, you can't make her any stronger. And if he pulls her, and he can, well, he will. So the other thing is, when you're leading him and stuff, I would be a little bit more, instead of saying, I'm teaching you, I would be a little bit more at the stage that, that, mate, I'm not going to say I'm teaching you how to do this. I'm expecting you know how to do this. So sometimes I would pick up on that rope and say, we're going now fast, and now we're going to go slow. And I would be a little bit out of your normal rhythm, but still very clear with the rope, or the lead rope. And when you ride him, I would say, now I'm turning. Oh, hang on, we're running late. We've got to get around the corner a bit faster, and test him with increased rein speeds. And usually sometimes we can get in a bit of a rhythm. The horse gets used to that rhythm. But then when we come out of that rhythm and we say we've got to do something in a hurry, then we find the brace and we get resistance. So I would be testing him, almost, on the things that he knows, but say, can you do it a bit quicker? Can you do it now? Can you come with that rein now? Can you lead up now? Quick, stop, back up. There's a snake in front of me. Oh, hang on, quick, there's a fire behind me. Let's go again. And you really get him to sort of, you're just testing him to see if there's any cracks in there that suddenly split open and go, I found one. Yeah. So that's what I'd sort of look at too with him. Just expose him a little bit and see if he's really, really with that rope and rein and with you.
Next question is from Law from, I'm not quite sure where she's from, but she's got a couple of youngsters that need to get rugged. So she'd like some advice on introducing them to rugs. So they've never had anything put over them. As far as she knows, they're unbroken and they need to live out in their paddocks all of their time. Have you got tips for that?
I will say this: do you need to rug them if they're going to live outside and that? Because unless they're going to go to a show and they have to look shiny, there's not a big necessity for rugs if they're young ones. Sometimes old horses are rugs as good as a feed, they say. Sometimes, but you just have to be careful with rugs and regulating their body temperature, so, but if you're going to put a rug on them, the last thing you ever want to do is have them spook in the paddock and really run away from a rug. So it's essential that you get a fair bit of handling on them. So they have to lead really well so you can control them when you put the rug on. And there's no question on the boundary of the lead rope, so leading is essential. The leading is what teaches them to yield to pressure, all that sort of stuff, get them really soft. Then once the leading's done, the things I'd be looking at is I'd get long folded rope, and I'd make sure I could put a rope around every one of those legs and sort of move the rope around their legs, like you fold the rope around and they can handle that rope around their legs. So get their legs well handled with rope. And then what you do is you lead them and you start to pull the rope and move it and pull a little bit of pressure on it, so they felt different pressures right up underneath. Up underneath their armpits and up where their flank is, right up as many places you can. And then also get them put a bit of pressure on that rope so they can actually soften their legs to the rope. Also, and where the rug straps are, so they're okay with all that sort of stuff. That's really essential. I think the other thing that's really important is you sort of, you get something that like a half a blanket or a towel, and you at a distance from them, you shake it in the air, you shake it around so they can see that, there's a scary thing, and then lead them towards that scary thing so they're going, oh, it's not coming at me, and then lead them into the towel or something, start with, and lead them in, handle them with the towel, start to flick it over them while they're walking around, stuff like that. Everything you've done at a standstill, you have to have movement, so you just lead them and, and then, you could put a bag on a stick, like a big sort of I don't know, a bit of tarp or a just a sheet, an old sheet or something tied on a stick, and you can sort of rub them over with that. Then you can drag it along the ground while you lead them, and just let things like fall off them and lead near them, so it's dragging beside them and stuff like that. And they've seen things drag beside them, because the biggest thing is you don't want them to suddenly have a rug half fall off and they see this thing beside them, they run away from it, and then they just keep galloping off away from it. So basically, if you can drag an old rug on the ground while you're leading them beside it, stuff like that, have them really get used to things that are just big and rug-like around them and dragging, and then basically get them to stage it. And every time you're rubbing them with a big rug thing or something or putting it on their back, you can move their feet with that lead rope, and they're still adjustable. If they freeze in that lead rope and you had them really soft when the rug wasn't on them, or the object that you're kind of stimulating the rug, and they suddenly freeze, keep working on that lead till they unfreeze and they soften and they breathe and they just cope with all that. I would put a breeching rope on them. I teach them to come forward off a breeching rope. As many leading exercises and just rope leading exercises around their legs to help them. And then the final thing, once they're at that stage, you just put a rug on that's unrugged, that's not got the leg straps or the chest strap on it. You just let them carry it around. Then you pull it off them while they're leading around and pull it off the other side. Make sure they've seen it fall off them and put it back on them again. And then the other thing you do is you put a rope around their chest so they're used to pressure on their chest if the rug tightens up on their chest and stuff like that. Then last thing, put the rug on. And then make sure that you've seen them walk, trot and canter in a small yard or somewhere safe or online or something at least, because if they get a canter up with a rug, that's the most dangerous bit. But if you've done all that, they're usually going to be pretty good. But I still think it's important, because not a lot of horses rug bolt, but if you ever see one, you'll never want to see it again. So
No, I've seen a couple. So I just want to go backwards a step there. Do rugs help quieten a horse, especially a young one? Is it sort of part of the training education, or is that an old school train of thought?
a rug gets them used to. Well, some people want to sell their horses, and those horses are going to go to be showed and stuff like that. So it's imperative that those horses, they're probably going to have a rug on in their life, and it's better while they're young to have that on them and get used to it. The biggest thing with rug training is don't desensitize them and just get them to stand still and dull out to the rug flapping on them. Make sure they're adjustable at all times in the lead, always adjustable. But it's really good for them to carry an object on their back that can blow around a bit, flap a bit, make a bit of noise, because they're eventually going to have a rider on them with a raincoat and a saddle and all that sort of stuff. So it does help them cope with foreign objects that are quite big and sort of visual on them. And they just get used to that, so they're happy with that and they're fine. So yeah, it's certainly good for their getting used to having things on them.
All right. And do you rug your horses, Mark?
No, because then you have to unrug them. We get down to -5, I suppose, and yeah, they don't. Yeah, it gets. The only time I've seen maybe a need for a rug is when you get this cold snap come through in an older horse that's a bit lean or something, and the wind and the rain. So when horses are in wind and rain, that's when you see them standing and start to shiver. The horses in small yards shiver more. The ones that are out in the paddock and they move a bit more, they always stay a bit warmer. So, if you've suddenly got a horse from a different area, and it's always just one of those horses that doesn't have one of those good winter coats, and it moves from a more of a Queensland hot area to a cold area, well, you might want to just help it out a little bit instead of putting it out in a cold winter's day and letting it freeze. So yes, you would probably rug it in those situations. For our horses, they're just always out in the paddock, so they've always got good winter coats and they're in good condition, they're healthy, so they don't feel the cold. But what I see a lot, which really annoys me, is people put a rug on, or they put it on a cold day, but then the sun comes out and they don't go and unrug it. So then the horse is standing there and they can't regulate their temperature, so they stand there with this rug on, getting hot, and that's the danger in rugging horses. So definitely don't rug them when you're travelling them, because there's so much heat inside a float or a horse trailer that they get really hot in that. People just sometimes leave a rug on in the cold night, and because it's a lighter rug, they leave it on through the day too. And that's not good, because you're going from a cold night to a hotter day, and the horse is not regulating temperature. So it's the overheating that rugs cause that's the biggest problem.
Overheating, of course, yeah, and people don't realise that they go to work, it's freezing, but actually the sun can get quite warm in the day. It can in Australia anyway. We've got a massive diurnal range, we can sort of hit 16, 17 degrees, but then in the night time it'll drop to -5, but they just don't need a rug during the day. And then you see horses, you can drive to town and you'll see rugs on horses everywhere, and you're like, oh no, they've just been left abandoned in the paddock again. So you choose not to rug, so that's really interesting. So that is an option.
Yeah, well, it's just another job too. When you've got lots of jobs to do, it's just another one.
That's it for today. Thank you for all the questions that have come through from our online members. So massive thanks to you. We wouldn't be doing this without you. And we hope those answers have been helpful. And we will see you again next week.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to Australia's very own Mark Langley, a horseman with many insights from his decades of dabbling. Jump online to keep learning. marklangley.com.au